London, 1810. Her younger sisters dazzled every suitor, but the feared Duke asked for the eldest's hand. Lady Eleanor Ashford stood in the corner of the ballroom, watching her three beautiful sisters dance with London's most eligible bachelors. At 26, Eleanor had long accepted her role as the family's forgotten daughter, plain, scholarly, invisible. Then the Duke of Thornwood arrived. He was a war hero scarred by battle, rumoured to have killed a man with his bare hands. So terrifying that debutantes whispered his name like a curse. Every family pushed their daughters forward, desperate for his title and wealth. But the Duke's cold grey eyes found Eleanor in the shadows, and what he said next would shatter everything she believed about herself, about love, and about why the most broken souls sometimes recognize each other across a crowded room. If stories like this move you, please subscribe to Wild Heart Stories. Every subscription helps us share more extraordinary tales of survival, second chances, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Your support means these incredible true stories reach hearts that need them most. Lady Eleanor Ashford had learned to be invisible. In a family of 5 daughters, where beauty was currency and charm was armor, Eleanor possessed neither. Her sisters, Marianne, Cecilia, and the twins Violet and Rose, were the pride of English society. Golden-haired, graceful, accomplished in all the arts that mattered: music, painting, witty conversation, and the delicate dance of courtship. Eleanor was different. Too tall, too angular, too serious. Her hair was an indeterminate brown that defied styling. Her eyes were grey instead of the fashionable blue or green. Her skin refused to achieve the porcelain complexion that poets praised. Worse, she read books, real books, philosophy, science, history. She asked questions at dinner parties that made men uncomfortable and women scandalized. By her 3rd London season, at age 21, Eleanor had accepted reality. She would never marry. Her father, the Earl of Ashford, had made peace with this as well, allowing Eleanor to manage his extensive library and assist with estate correspondence. It was useful work for a daughter who would never bring the family an advantageous marriage alliance. Now, 5 years later, Eleanor stood in the Duke of Pemberton's ballroom, watching her youngest sisters, the 17-year-old twins, make their debut. Violet wore pale pink silk that made her look like a rose. Rose wore lavender that complemented her golden curls. They were exquisite, identical, irresistible. Every bachelor in London circled them like moths to flame. Viscounts, earls' sons, even a marquess. The twins smiled, danced, laughed at precisely the right moments. They were performing femininity perfectly, as they had been trained since birth. Eleanor watched from the corner, where spinsters and chaperones gathered. She wore a grey gown that matched her eyes. Practical, forgettable, expensive enough not to embarrass the family, but plain enough to ensure no one looked at her twice. She was reading, in a ballroom. She had tucked a small volume of Plato's Republic into her reticule and was skimming passages between observing her sisters. The other chaperones gave her pitying looks. Poor Lady Eleanor, so unfortunate. Such a shame when the younger girls are so lovely. Then the whispers started. He is here, the Duke of Thornwood. I heard he killed 3 men in Spain with his bare hands. My cousin saw his scars, said half his face was destroyed in the war. Why would he come to London? He has not attended society in 7 years. Eleanor looked up from her book. The ballroom had gone silent, every head turned toward the entrance. And there he stood, Alexander Blackwood, the 7th Duke of Thornwood, war hero, recluse, legend. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that suggested brutal physical power. His face was indeed scarred, a jagged line running from his left temple across his cheek to his jaw. His hair was black, worn slightly too long. His eyes were grey like storm clouds, and they held something that made Eleanor's breath catch. Recognition, not of her specifically, but of something familiar. Loneliness, isolation, the particular kind of pain that comes from being seen as a thing rather than a person. The Duke descended the stairs, and the crowd parted like water. Mothers pushed their daughters forward, desperate. His title was ancient, his wealth legendary, his properties vast. He could choose anyone. Every family in England would sacrifice anything to secure such a match. The Duke surveyed the room with cold assessment. His eyes passed over the twins, who curtsied beautifully, past Marianne and Cecilia, who had positioned themselves strategically, past the other debutantes who had been groomed their entire lives for exactly this moment, and stopped on Eleanor. She was still holding her book, still standing in the corner with the spinsters and chaperones, still completely unprepared to be noticed. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Eleanor felt something electric pass between them. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. He saw her, actually saw her. Not the invisible wallflower, not the family embarrassment. He saw the person hiding behind years of being overlooked. The Duke walked directly toward her. The crowd gasped. Mothers whispered furiously. Eleanor's own mother, Lady Ashford, looked horrified. What was he doing? Why was he approaching Eleanor when 3 perfect daughters stood waiting? The Duke stopped in front of Eleanor, bowed slightly. Lady Eleanor Ashford. His voice was deep, rough, like gravel. Eleanor found her own voice with difficulty. Your Grace, you are reading Plato at a ball. The Republic, if I am not mistaken. Eleanor looked down at the book still clutched in her hands, felt heat rise to her cheeks. I find ballroom conversation tedious. Philosophy is more engaging. A muscle twitched near his scarred cheek. It might have been a smile. I agree completely. Would you do me the honor of a dance? The ballroom went absolutely silent. Eleanor heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, her sister's shocked whispers. The Duke of Thornwood had just asked the family spinster to dance while ignoring 3 beautiful, eligible, perfect daughters. Eleanor should have said yes immediately, should have been grateful, thrilled, honored. Instead, she asked, Why? The Duke's grey eyes held hers. Because you are the only person in this room reading Plato. Because you hide in corners. Because you do not want to be here any more than I do. Because I suspect you understand what it means to be seen as a curiosity rather than a person. The honesty shocked her, disarmed her. Eleanor placed her book on a nearby table, accepted his offered hand. Then yes, Your Grace, I will dance with you. He led her to the center of the ballroom floor. The orchestra began a waltz, and Eleanor, who had not danced in 5 years, who had forgotten how bodies moved together in rhythm, found herself following the Duke's lead with surprising ease. He was an excellent dancer despite his war injuries, strong, confident, precise in his movements. Eleanor focused on the steps, acutely aware of every eye in the ballroom watching them, judging them, making calculations about what this meant. They are staring, Eleanor said quietly. Let them. I have been stared at for 7 years. You become accustomed to it. Does it stop hurting? The Duke looked down at her, and for the first time, something softened in his eyes. No, you simply learn to carry the pain differently. The dance ended. The Duke bowed. Eleanor curtsied. As he straightened, he said, I will call on your father tomorrow, to request permission to court you. Eleanor's heart stopped. I beg your pardon? You heard me correctly, Lady Eleanor. I intend to court you if you are amenable. But my sisters, they are beautiful, accomplished, perfect. I am none of those things. The Duke's expression hardened. Your sisters are performing. You are real. I have spent 7 years surrounded by performance. Soldiers performing bravery, society performing respect, women performing interest in a scarred duke with a title. I am tired of performance. You interest me. That is rare enough to pursue. Before Eleanor could respond, he turned and walked away, cutting through the crowd that parted hastily before him. He left the ball entirely, his duty apparently complete. Eleanor stood frozen on the dance floor, aware of hundreds of eyes on her, aware of her mother pushing through the crowd toward her with an expression of barely controlled panic. Eleanor, what did he say to you? Did he express interest? Oh God, we must prepare. If the Duke of Thornwood is courting you, everything changes. Everything. Her sisters surrounded her, questions tumbling over each other. What was he like? Did he mention his scars? Why did he choose you instead of us? The last question from Violet, delivered with genuine confusion rather than malice. Eleanor extracted herself from her family, retrieved her book, and fled to the ladies' retiring room. She needed air, needed space, needed to understand what had just happened. She found a quiet corner, pressed her back against the wall, tried to steady her breathing. The Duke of Thornwood wanted to court her. The most eligible, most feared, most reclusive man in England had looked past her 3 beautiful sisters and chosen the spinster reading philosophy in a corner. It made no sense, unless Eleanor's mind, trained in logic and analysis, worked through possibilities. He needed a wife quickly, some scandal, some pressure from family. He wanted someone plain who would not attract attention. He sought a marriage of convenience with a woman who expected nothing, or the small voice in her head whispered. He meant exactly what he said, that he was tired of performance and found her interesting. Eleanor did not know which possibility frightened her more. The next morning, the Duke arrived at Ashford House at precisely 11 o'clock. Eleanor watched from the library window as his carriage pulled up, black, elegant, bearing the Thornwood crest. He descended, and even from this distance she could see how people on the street stopped to stare, to whisper, to point at the scarred Duke who never came to London. Her father received him in his study. Eleanor was not permitted to attend these discussions. Women's presence in marriage negotiations was considered inappropriate, but she pressed her ear to the study door anyway, desperate to hear what was being said. Her father's voice uncertain. "Your Grace, while I am honored by your interest, I must confess some confusion. My daughter Eleanor, while intelligent and capable, is not, that is to say, her younger sisters are more traditionally," the Duke's voice, cold and cutting, "more traditionally beautiful, more traditionally accomplished in needlework and watercolors. I am aware, Lord Ashford. I chose Lady Eleanor precisely because she is not traditional. I have no interest in a decorative wife who simpers and faints. I want an intelligent companion who can manage a household, engage in meaningful conversation, and understand the responsibilities that come with my title." A pause. Then her father. "You are serious. You truly wish to court Eleanor. I am here, am I not? I do not engage in frivolous pursuits. I will be direct. I need a duchess. My mother has been pressuring me for years to marry, to produce an heir, to fulfill my obligations to the dukedom. I have resisted because every woman presented to me has been exactly the same, vapid, terrified of my scars, interested only in my title. Your daughter is different. She looked at me without fear or calculation. She asked me why I chose her instead of simpering gratefully. That honesty is worth more than all the beauty and accomplishments in England." Eleanor felt something tighten in her chest. He was being pragmatic, not romantic. This was a business arrangement. He needed a duchess who would not faint at his scarred face or bore him with empty conversation. She happened to meet those minimal requirements. It should not have hurt. She had never expected romance, had never imagined love, but hearing him describe their potential marriage as purely transactional felt like a cold knife sliding between her ribs. Her father's voice. "What are your terms?" "I will court Lady Eleanor for 6 weeks publicly. I will attend necessary social functions, call upon her regularly, demonstrate my intentions to society. If at the end of 6 weeks we both find the arrangement agreeable, I will propose marriage. The settlement will be generous, £20,000 a year for Lady Eleanor's personal use, full authority over all Thornwood properties, and guaranteed provisions for any children we may have." Eleanor heard her father's sharp intake of breath. £20,000 was an extraordinary sum. Most wives received a few £100s annually for pin money. The Duke was offering Eleanor true financial independence. "And if Lady Eleanor refuses," her father asked, "then I return to Thornwood Abbey and resume my life alone. I will not force this match if she does not wish it. But I hope she will give me the opportunity to demonstrate that a marriage based on mutual respect and intellectual companionship can be more satisfying than one based on empty romance." Eleanor pulled away from the door, her mind racing. The Duke was offering her a choice. That alone was revolutionary. Most women had no say in their marriages. Fathers negotiated, arrangements were made, daughters complied. But he was asking if she found the arrangement agreeable, as if her opinion mattered, as if she were a person rather than property to be transferred. The study door opened. Her father emerged, looking dazed. "Eleanor, His Grace wishes to speak with you. Alone." Eleanor entered the study. The Duke stood by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. He did not turn when she entered. "You were listening at the door," he said. "Not a question." "Yes." "Good. Then you heard my terms. Are they acceptable to you?" Eleanor circled around to face him, refusing to address his back. "You speak of our potential marriage as if negotiating a business contract. Is that not what all marriages are? Contracts exchanging property, titles, alliances? Most marriages, yes, but you speak of it with such coldness, as if there is no possibility of affection, of companionship, of something beyond mutual convenience." The Duke turned to face her fully, his scarred face illuminated by morning light from the window. "Lady Eleanor, I will be honest with you. I do not believe in romantic love. I have seen too much death, too much cruelty, too much of what humans do to each other when stripped of civilization's veneer. Romance is a fairy tale told to young girls to make palatable the reality of being sold to the highest bidder. Eleanor flinched at his bluntness, but she appreciated the honesty. Then why marry at all? Because I am 34 years old. Because my mother will not cease her campaign to see me wed. Because I need an heir to prevent my title from passing to a cousin I despise. Because running a ducal estate alone is exhausting, and I need a capable partner who can manage the social and domestic aspects I find intolerable. He paused. And because I believe you and I could coexist without the usual marital misery. We would not bore each other. We would not need to pretend affection we do not feel. We could build something functional, perhaps even pleasant, based on mutual respect rather than false sentiment. Eleanor studied him carefully. 7 years of war had carved away whatever softness he might have possessed as a young man. He was hard now, practical, scarred inside and out, but he was also offering her something no other man ever would, truth instead of pretty lies. What would you expect of me as your Duchess? Eleanor asked. Management of all domestic affairs, hosting when necessary, though I detest social gatherings and will attend only the most essential, oversight of tenant relations, household staff, charitable endeavors. An heir, if possible, though I will not force intimacy if you find the prospect repellent. He said this last part with clinical detachment, but Eleanor saw something flicker in his eyes. Shame, perhaps, or the expectation of rejection. And what would I receive in return? Financial independence unprecedented for a married woman, full authority over Thornwood properties, which include the main estate, 2 smaller manor houses, and a London townhouse, access to one of England's finest private libraries, over 10,000 volumes, freedom to pursue your intellectual interests without censure, and a husband who will never lie to you, never belittle you, and never expect you to be anything other than yourself. Eleanor felt her breath catch. He was offering her everything she had never dared hope for: freedom, resources, respect. The price was marriage to a scarred, cold man who admitted he did not believe in love. It should have been an easy decision to refuse. But as she looked at the Duke, at his rigid posture and carefully controlled expression, she saw something beneath the hardness. Loneliness. The same profound isolation she felt standing in ballroom corners while her sisters dazzled. He was as invisible in his own way as she was in hers. Everyone saw the title, the scars, the reputation. No one saw the man. I have conditions, Eleanor said. The Duke's eyebrows rose slightly. Name them. I will not be relegated to the domestic sphere entirely. I want to be involved in estate management, in business decisions, in matters traditionally reserved for men. If I am to be your Duchess, I will be a true partner, not an ornament. Agreed. I would welcome your involvement. My current steward is competent but unimaginative. I want to continue my studies. Philosophy, science, whatever interests me. I will not pretend to be less intelligent to make you comfortable. I would be disappointed if you did. A thinking wife is far preferable to a vapid one. I want honesty. Always. I would rather hear harsh truths than comforting lies. Something shifted in the Duke's expression, the slightest softening around his eyes. That is the easiest condition to meet. I am incapable of charming falsehoods. You will always know exactly where you stand with me. Eleanor took a breath. Then yes, Your Grace, I accept your courtship. 6 weeks to determine if we suit. If at the end we both agree, I will marry you. The Duke extended his hand. Eleanor took it, felt the calluses from years of sword work and manual labor. This was not the soft hand of a gentleman who did nothing but dance and gamble. This was the hand of a soldier, a survivor. They shook on it like business partners sealing a contract. I will call on you tomorrow at 2, the Duke said. We will take a drive through Hyde Park. Society needs to see us together, to understand my intentions. Will they not think it strange? The Duke courting the plainest daughter? The Duke's jaw tightened. Society thinks many things, most of them stupid. Let them gossip. By the end of 6 weeks, they will have moved on to the next scandal. After he left, Eleanor's mother descended upon her like a bird of prey. What did you discuss? Did he propose? Eleanor, you must tell me everything. This is the most extraordinary development. The Duke of Thornwood. No one believed he would ever marry, and he has chosen you. The emphasis on you stung even though Eleanor understood her mother's shock. In a family of beauties, Eleanor had always been the disappointing one. Her sisters were equally incredulous. Marianne, at 24 and still unmarried despite her beauty, looked particularly bitter. I do not understand. He did not even look at me, or Cecilia, or the twins. Why you, Eleanor? Eleanor could have explained that the Duke wanted intelligence over beauty, conversation over simpering, honesty over performance. But her family would not understand. They had been trained to believe that a woman's value lay in her appearance and accomplishments. The idea that a man might value something else was incomprehensible to them. He prefers reading to dancing, Eleanor said simply. We have that in common. The next afternoon, the Duke arrived in his open carriage. Eleanor wore a simple blue walking dress, her hair arranged in a practical style rather than the elaborate curls her mother had attempted. If the Duke wanted her as she was, she would not pretend to be something else. Hyde Park at 2 o'clock was society's stage. Every family of consequence paraded their daughters, hoping to catch the eye of eligible bachelors. The appearance of the Duke of Thornwood in an open carriage with Lady Eleanor Ashford caused an immediate sensation. People stopped mid-conversation to stare. Mothers whispered furiously behind fans. Eleanor saw Lady Pemberton, whose daughter had been considered the season's diamond, look absolutely stricken. The Duke seemed oblivious to the attention, or perhaps simply accustomed to being stared at. He guided the horses with expert hands, his focus on the path ahead. You are uncomfortable, he observed without looking at her. I am not accustomed to being the center of attention. You will be for the next 6 weeks. Can you tolerate it? Eleanor considered. Being invisible had been painful, yes, but being visible meant exposure, vulnerability, the constant awareness of being judged. I can tolerate it if you can. I have tolerated far worse than gossip. His tone was matter-of-fact, but Eleanor heard the edge beneath it. War, death, whatever horrors had carved those scars into his face. They completed one circuit of the park in silence. Then the Duke spoke again. Tell me what you're reading currently. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. I find his theories on labor and markets fascinating. The Duke's scarred cheek twitched, that almost smile again. And what do you think of his invisible hand theory? They spent the next hour discussing economics, philosophy, theories of government. The Duke was astonishingly well-read, his mind sharp and challenging. He disagreed with Eleanor on several points, but he listened to her arguments, considered them seriously, responded with intellectual respect. It was the most stimulating conversation Eleanor had experienced in years, possibly ever. Her father indulged her reading but did not truly engage with her ideas. Her sisters found intellectual discussion boring. The few men she had encountered at social functions either dismissed her opinions entirely or patronized her with condescending explanations. The Duke did neither. He treated her as an equal, a mind worth engaging. When he returned her to Ashford House, he handed her down from the carriage with formal correctness. Tomorrow, I will call at 3. Bring whatever book you are currently reading. We will discuss it. You do not wish to promenade, to be seen together again. We will be seen together at Lady Pemberton's musicale tomorrow evening. Your mother received an invitation this morning. I assume you will attend. Eleanor had been planning to avoid the musical. She loathed such events. But if the Duke would be there... Yes, I will attend. Good. I will claim the seat beside you. Society will draw the appropriate conclusions. He paused, his grey eyes studying her face. Are you finding this courtship tolerable so far, Lady Eleanor? The question surprised her with its consideration. Yes, Your Grace. More than tolerable. I find your company refreshing. Refreshing. Not charming or delightful or any of the usual empty compliments. I promised you honesty. Charming would be a lie. Refreshing is accurate. That almost smile again. Then we suit each other already. Until tomorrow, Lady Eleanor. He climbed back into his carriage and drove away, leaving Eleanor standing on the front steps, feeling strangely bereft. Her mother materialized beside her, eyes gleaming with barely contained triumph. He is courting you properly, publicly. Eleanor, do you understand what this means? The Duke of Thornwood. Our family will be elevated beyond anything I dared dream. You must not ruin this. Please tell me you will not ruin this with your peculiar ways. Eleanor felt the familiar sting of her mother's backhanded concern. Even now, being courted by a duke, she was still the family's liability, still the daughter who might embarrass them at any moment. I will be myself, Mother. That is what the Duke wants. But he asked me to bring whatever book I am reading to our next meeting. He wants to discuss economics and philosophy. He chose me precisely because I am not like other women. If I pretend to be someone else, he will lose interest. Her mother looked genuinely baffled by this concept. A man who wants a thinking wife. How extraordinary, how very odd. That evening, Eleanor's sisters cornered her in her room. Marianne sat on the bed, arms crossed. Cecilia perched by the window. The twins flanked the door like sentries. "We want to understand," Marianne said. "What is his interest in you? Truly?" Eleanor could have been offended. Instead, she recognized the question for what it was. Genuine confusion from women who had been raised to believe beauty was currency. "He does not want a traditional wife," Eleanor explained. "He wants someone who can manage his estates, engage intellectually, function as a true partner rather than an ornament. My reading, my education, my lack of interest in frivolous pursuits, these are assets to him, not deficits." Violet frowned. "But does he not care that you are not beautiful?" The question, asked with innocent bluntness by her 17-year-old sister, cut deeper than Marianne's bitterness. Because it was true. Eleanor was not beautiful, never would be. "I do not know," Eleanor admitted. "He has not mentioned my appearance at all. Perhaps it does not matter to him. Perhaps his own scars have made him value substance over surface." Rose, always the more thoughtful twin, said quietly, "He is very frightening, Eleanor. Those scars, that coldness, are you not afraid of him?" Eleanor considered the question seriously. "No, I am not afraid. He is hard, yes, scarred. But he has been honest with me about what he wants, what he expects. There is safety in that honesty. I would rather marry a cold man who tells the truth than a charming one who lies." Her sisters exchanged glances, clearly not understanding. They had been raised on romantic novels, on the idea that love and passion were the only worthy foundations for marriage. Eleanor's pragmatic acceptance of a loveless match must seem like surrender to them. But Eleanor had never expected love, had never been the kind of woman men fell in love with. The Duke's offer of intellectual partnership and mutual respect was more than she had ever hoped to receive. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. The Duke called every afternoon at 3. They would sit in the drawing room, chaperoned by Eleanor's long-suffering mother, and discuss whatever books they were reading. Or they would take drives through the park, engaging in conversations that ranged from politics to science to philosophy. He attended social functions he clearly detested, balls, musicales, dinner parties, always claiming the seat beside Eleanor, always making his courtship intentions unmistakably clear. Society buzzed with speculation. Some thought it romantic, the scarred Duke finding unexpected love with the overlooked daughter. Others thought it scandalous. Why would such an eligible man settle for such a plain wife? Eleanor tried to ignore the gossip, tried to focus on the growing ease between herself and the Duke, because something was shifting. The formal distance of their first meetings was softening into something that resembled friendship. The Duke, he had asked her to call him Alexander in private, revealed himself in small increments. He spoke rarely of the war, but Eleanor pieced together fragments. 7 years in Spain, horrific battles, soldiers dying in his arms, the explosion that had scarred his face and killed his closest friend. "I should have died that day," Alexander said one afternoon as they walked through the Ashford house gardens. "The blast threw me 20 feet. When I woke, half my face was burned, my friend was dead, and I understood that survival was not mercy. It was punishment. To live while better men died, that is the burden I carry." Eleanor stopped walking, turned to face him. "You think you deserve the scars, the isolation. You think it is penance for surviving." His grey eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw real vulnerability there. "Yes, that is not how survival works, Your Grace. You lived because chance favored you that day. It does not mean you deserved life more than your friend. It simply means you lived. What you do with that life, that is where meaning lies." Alexander stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, so quietly, she almost missed it, "No one has said that to me before. Everyone either pities me or fears me. No one has suggested that surviving might not be a crime. It is not a crime. It is simply what happened. The question is, what you will do now. Hiding at Thornwood Abbey, avoiding society, punishing yourself, that honors nothing and no one, and marrying you. Would that honor something?" Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks. I think building something functional and honest together honors the truth that we both deserve lives that are not defined entirely by pain and disappointment. Alexander's scarred face did something Eleanor had never seen before. He smiled. A real smile, not the bitter, almost smile she had glimpsed previously. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, less burdened. You are remarkable, Eleanor, I chose well. The compliment, delivered with simple sincerity, affected Eleanor more than any flowery declaration could have, because it was real, because he meant it. That evening they attended the Duchess of Marlborough's ball. Eleanor wore a new gown. Her mother had insisted on an entire new wardrobe befitting a potential duchess. The dress was deep green silk, more elegant than anything Eleanor had owned before, but still simple compared to her sister's elaborate confections. Alexander arrived to collect her, and when he saw her descending the stairs, he went very still. His eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made Eleanor's heart race. "You look—" He paused, seemed to search for words. "That color suits you. It makes your eyes appear more green than gray." It was not poetry, but coming from a man who dealt only in facts, it felt like the highest compliment Eleanor had ever received. The ball was torture, as all balls were, but having Alexander beside her made it bearable. He claimed every dance with Eleanor, ignoring the shocked whispers, the disapproving looks from mothers whose daughters he had rejected. During a waltz, Alexander spoke quietly. "I am causing you social difficulty. Your family is being snubbed by some of the more rigid matrons. I apologize." "Do not apologize. Anyone who would snub my family because you chose to court me is not worth my concern. You are braver than I anticipated." "No, I simply have very little to lose. I was already invisible before you noticed me. If some people disapprove of our courtship, it changes nothing for me. But you could have any woman in England. This match is beneath you by every conventional measure." Alexander stopped dancing mid-step, causing confusion among the other couples. He led Eleanor off the floor to a quiet corner, ignoring the stares. "Listen to me, Eleanor, and believe me, this match is not beneath me. You are not beneath me. You are the first person in 7 years who has looked at me and seen a man instead of a monster or a title. You speak to me as an equal. You challenge me intellectually. You do not flinch from my scars or my coldness. You are exactly what I need, and I will not have you thinking otherwise." His vehemence surprised her, moved her. Eleanor felt something dangerous flutter in her chest. Hope. The possibility that this arrangement might become more than mutual convenience. But she crushed it ruthlessly. Alexander had been clear from the beginning. He did not believe in romantic love. This was partnership, not passion. Friendship, not romance. She would not delude herself into expecting more. The 6 weeks of courtship were drawing to a close. 4 weeks had passed. In 2 more weeks, Alexander would propose, and Eleanor would accept. They would marry, move to Thornwood Abbey, begin their functional, honest, loveless partnership. It should have been enough. Eleanor told herself it was enough. But late at night, lying in her bed, she found herself thinking about the way Alexander had smiled in the garden, the way his eyes had tracked her descending the stairs, the way his hand had lingered on hers after helping her from the carriage. She was developing feelings, real feelings, for a man who had explicitly said he did not believe in love. It was foolish, dangerous. But Eleanor could not seem to stop it. The next afternoon, Alexander arrived looking troubled. He dismissed Eleanor's mother from the drawing room. Highly irregular, but she complied, clearly hoping this meant a proposal was imminent. Once they were alone, Alexander paced. Eleanor had never seen him restless before. He was always controlled, composed, rigid in his self-discipline. "There is something I must tell you," he said, "before we proceed further. You deserve full honesty about what marriage to me entails." Eleanor's stomach tightened with dread. "What is it?" Alexander stopped pacing, faced her directly. "I have nightmares every night. I wake screaming, sometimes violent, reliving battles, reliving the explosion. I have injured servants who tried to wake me. My valet now sleeps in an adjacent room and has learned to stay away when the nightmares strike." He paused, his jaw tight. "If we marry, we will maintain separate bedrooms, not for propriety, but for your safety. I will not risk harming you during one of my episodes." Eleanor absorbed this information. She had suspected war had damaged him psychologically as well as physically, but hearing him admit it so plainly was different. How often do the nightmares occur? Most nights. Sometimes multiple times. I have learned to manage with minimal sleep. Have you sought help? Medical consultation? What help exists for this? Doctors have no treatments for broken minds, only broken bodies. I have learned to endure. His voice was bitter. This is what you would be marrying, Eleanor. A man who cannot sleep peacefully, who carries war in his head every night, who will never be able to share a bed with his wife because he might wake and hurt her without realizing. If this is unacceptable, tell me now. I will end the courtship with no ill will. Eleanor stood, walked to where he stood rigid by the window. Alexander, look at me. He turned, his grey eyes guarded. Did you think this would change my decision? That learning you suffer from war trauma would make me reject you? It should. Any sensible woman would run from a man who admits he is violent in his sleep. I am not running, and I am not afraid. Eleanor took a breath, chose her words carefully. I have read accounts of soldiers returning from war with similar afflictions. The mind continues fighting, even when the body has left the battlefield. It is not your fault. It is not weakness. It is injury, just as real as your scars. That does not make it less dangerous. No, but it makes it something we can manage together. Separate bedrooms are not a hardship, and perhaps, with time, with safety, the nightmares will lessen. They have not lessened in 7 years. Because you have been alone, isolated, punishing yourself. Perhaps partnership will help where solitude has not. Alexander's expression softened slightly. You are determined to see the best in me despite all evidence to the contrary. I am determined to see the truth, and the truth is that you are a good man carrying unbearable weight. I would be honored to help you carry it. Something shifted in Alexander's eyes, surprise, gratitude, and something else Eleanor could not quite name. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture more intimate than anything they had shared before. I do not deserve you, Eleanor. Stop measuring everything in terms of deserving. We found each other. We suit each other. That is enough. Alexander raised her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat racing through Eleanor's entire body. In 2 weeks, I will propose formally. You may still refuse if you change your mind, but I hope you will not. I will not change my mind. After he left, Eleanor sat in the drawing room, her hand still tingling from his kiss. She was in love with him, completely, irrevocably in love, with a man who had explicitly said he did not believe in love, who saw their marriage as a practical arrangement. It would hurt. Loving someone who could not love her back would be a particular kind of torture. But Eleanor had spent 26 years invisible, overlooked, dismissed, being seen, being valued for her mind, even without her heart being returned. That was still more than she had ever expected. She would take what she could get, and perhaps over time, respect and partnership would be enough to build a life on. The final 2 weeks of courtship passed quickly. Alexander began introducing Eleanor to estate management, sharing ledgers and correspondence, teaching her about crop rotation and tenant relations. He was preparing her to be his duchess in truth, not just in name. Eleanor accompanied him to Thornwood Abbey for a day visit, chaperoned by her mother and Marianne. The estate was vast, 10,000 acres over 50 tenant farms, a main house with more than 100 rooms. It was intimidating in its grandeur, but Alexander walked Eleanor through it all with patient thoroughness. This will be your domain. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, has managed well, but she is aging and ready to hand over authority. The tenants are loyal, but some of the cottages need repair. The home farm could be more productive with better management. I need someone capable to oversee all of it. You truly want me to manage all this? I cannot do it alone. I've been trying for 7 years and failing. My strengths are in estate finances and land management. The household, the tenants, the social obligations. I need help. Your help, specifically. Eleanor felt both overwhelmed and exhilarated. This was real responsibility, real authority, not the decorative role most duchesses played, but true partnership in managing one of England's great estates. I will need time to learn, Eleanor said. I have never managed anything on this scale. I will teach you, and you learn quickly. I have observed that about you. They stood in the portrait gallery, surrounded by generations of Blackwood ancestors. Alexander gestured to an empty space on the wall. Your portrait will hang here. As my duchess, my mother has already commissioned an artist. Eleanor studied the existing portraits, Generations of beautiful women in elaborate gowns. She would be the plain one, the anomaly in this gallery of loveliness. But she would also be the one chosen for her mind, not her face. That felt like its own kind of victory. The proposal happened exactly as promised. 2 weeks after their courtship began, Alexander arrived at Ashford House with his mother, the Dowager Duchess of Thornwood. The Dowager was formidable, tall, silver-haired, with the same grey eyes as her son. She examined Eleanor with shrewd assessment. "So you are the blue stocking who has captured my son's interest. I confess, I had despaired of him ever marrying. He rejected every woman I put before him." "Mother," Alexander said warningly. "Oh, hush. Lady Eleanor deserves to know what she is getting into. My son is difficult, stubborn, haunted by war. He will not be an easy husband, but he is honest, loyal, and desperately needs someone with sense to help him manage. I believe you possess that sense." It was hardly a ringing endorsement, but Eleanor appreciated the honesty. "Thank you, Your Grace. I understand what I am accepting." The formal proposal happened in the drawing room with both families present. Alexander knelt. His war-damaged knee made it difficult, but he managed and presented a ring. A massive emerald surrounded by diamonds, clearly a Thornwood family heirloom. "Lady Eleanor Ashford, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife, my duchess, my partner in all things?" Every eye in the room was on her. Her mother looked ready to faint with joy. Her sisters watched with mixed expressions of envy and confusion. The Dowager watched with cool appraisal. Eleanor looked at Alexander's scarred face, his grey eyes holding something that might have been hope, and felt her heart swell with emotions she could not name. "Yes, Your Grace, I will marry you." The room erupted in congratulations. Her mother wept. Her father looked dazed that his unmarriageable daughter had secured the match of the decade. Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger. It was slightly loose, would need to be resized, and stood. He should have kissed her. Custom dictated a kiss to seal an engagement. But Alexander simply bowed over her hand, a gesture of respect rather than passion. Eleanor told herself she did not mind. That passion was not what either of them wanted. That respect and partnership were more valuable than fleeting physical attraction. But she would have liked to be kissed, just once, to know what it felt like. The wedding was planned for 6 weeks hence. Eleanor's mother wanted an elaborate affair, but Alexander insisted on something smaller, more private. They compromised on a ceremony at the family chapel at Thornwood Abbey with 100 guests. Eleanor spent those 6 weeks in a whirlwind of preparation. Trousseau fittings, meetings with the Thornwood staff, learning the intricacies of running a ducal household. The Dowager proved to be an unexpected ally, teaching Eleanor the unwritten rules of noble society with brisk efficiency. "You will face opposition," the Dowager warned. "Many will think my son married beneath himself. You must prove them wrong through competence, not charm. Manage the estate flawlessly. Fulfill your duties. Let your work speak louder than gossip." Eleanor appreciated this practical advice. She had never been charming, but she could be competent. She could work harder than anyone expected. Alexander visited daily during those 6 weeks, but always with proper chaperones, never alone. Their conversations remained intellectual, friendly, carefully bounded by propriety. He treated her with unfailing respect and increasing warmth, but nothing that suggested romantic feeling. Eleanor tried to be content with this, tried to ignore the growing ache in her chest every time he smiled at her, every time his hand brushed hers accidentally, every time she imagined what their life together might be like if he could love her. 2 days before the wedding, Eleanor's sister Marianne cornered her in her bedroom. "I must know, are you happy? Truly happy? Or is this simply the best option available to you?" Eleanor considered the question honestly. "Both. I am marrying a man I respect, who respects me in return, who will give me authority and purpose, who sees value in my mind. Is that love? No, but it is more than I ever hoped for." "But do you love him?" Eleanor looked away. "That is irrelevant." "Eleanor," Marianne's voice softened, "it is not irrelevant. I see how you look at him. You have fallen in love with the Duke, and he has not fallen in love with you. That will hurt. Every day of your marriage, it will hurt." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "Then I will learn to live with the hurt. I have lived with being overlooked and dismissed for 26 years. I can live with being respected but not loved. It is still better than what I had before." Marianne embraced her, something she had not done in years. "I hope you're right. I hope respect is enough, but Eleanor, if it becomes unbearable, if loving him without return destroys you, promise me you will not suffer in silence." "I promise." The wedding day arrived, clear and bright. Eleanor dressed in ivory silk, her hair arranged simply, a lace veil that had belonged to Alexander's grandmother. She looked in the mirror and saw not a beautiful bride, but a presentable one. It would have to be enough. Her father escorted her down the aisle of Thornwood Chapel. Alexander waited at the altar, dressed in formal black, his scarred face solemn. When Eleanor reached him, he took her hand, and she felt the slight tremor in his fingers. He was nervous. The discovery surprised her. The ceremony proceeded with traditional Anglican ritual. They spoke vows of loyalty, fidelity, partnership. When the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Alexander lifted her veil with careful hands. This was the moment, the kiss that sealed a marriage. Eleanor's heart pounded. Alexander bent his head, and for one breathless moment, Eleanor thought he might actually kiss her properly. But at the last second, he turned his head slightly, pressing his lips to her cheek instead of her mouth. It was chaste, proper, disappointing. They turned to face the congregation as the Duke and Duchess of Thornwood. Eleanor saw her mother weeping with joy, her sisters watching with complex emotions, the dowager nodding approval. She was married. She was a duchess. She had achieved more than anyone in her family had thought possible. So why did she feel so hollow? The wedding breakfast was elegant but brief. Alexander clearly wanted the social obligation over as quickly as possible. By late afternoon they were in his carriage, travelling to Thornwood Abbey to begin their married life. They sat across from each other, not side by side. The physical distance felt symbolic. "You are quiet," Alexander observed. "I am thinking." "About?" Eleanor chose honesty. "About what happens now. We are married. We are alone together for the first time without chaperones. And I realize I do not know what you expect of me." Alexander's expression was unreadable. "I expect nothing beyond what we discussed. You will manage the household. I will manage the estate finances. We will coexist cordially. When the time comes to produce an heir, we will approach it practically, without sentiment." The clinical description of intimacy made Eleanor flinch, but she nodded. "And otherwise? We will live as friends." "Yes, friends. Companions. That is what I hoped for." Eleanor looked out the window at the passing countryside. Friends. Companions. Not lovers. Not even truly husband and wife in the emotional sense. Just two people sharing a home and responsibilities. She could do this. She had to do this. She had made her choice. Thornwood Abbey looked different arriving as its mistress than it had on her previous visit. The staff lined up to greet their new duchess. Dozens of faces Eleanor would need to learn. Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper, curtsied deeply. "Welcome home, Your Grace." Home. This vast, imposing estate was now her home. Alexander showed her to her rooms, a suite even more elaborate than she had expected. Bedroom, dressing room, private sitting room, all decorated in soft greens and creams. "These were my mother's rooms when my father was alive. She has since moved to the dower house. They are yours now." "Where are your rooms?" "2 doors down the hall. Close enough for propriety, far enough for safety." He said it matter-of-factly, but Eleanor saw the tension in his shoulders. He expected her to be relieved by the distance. Instead, she felt a sharp pang of loss. "I will leave you to rest," Alexander said. "Dinner is at 8. I will send a maid to help you dress." He left before Eleanor could respond. She stood alone in her grand new rooms, married for less than 6 hours, already feeling the weight of loneliness settling over her like a shroud. That night at dinner, they sat at opposite ends of an absurdly long table. Footmen served course after course. Alexander made polite conversation about the estate, about plans for the coming weeks. Eleanor responded appropriately, playing her role, but inside she was screaming. This was her life now. Formal dinners with her husband 20 feet away, separate bedrooms, cordial friendship masking her unrequited love. After dinner, Alexander escorted her back to her rooms. At her door, he hesitated. "Eleanor, I know this is not what romantic novels promise, but I hope you will find satisfaction in our partnership, in the work we will do together, in the life we will build." "I am sure I will," Eleanor said, forcing brightness into her voice. Alexander looked like he wanted to say more. Instead, he bowed slightly. "Good night, Eleanor. Sleep well." He walked away, his footsteps echoing down the long hallway. Eleanor entered her rooms, allowed her maid to help her undress, and finally, alone, allowed herself to cry. She had married the man she loved, and he would never love her back. The first weeks of marriage established a pattern. Eleanor rose early, met with Mrs. Davies and the head gardener, toured the estate, learned tenant names and family situations. She threw herself into work with desperate energy, because work meant she did not have to think about how lonely she felt. Alexander was often gone during the day, managing the home farm, meeting with his steward, riding the estate boundaries. At dinner, they would discuss their respective days with cordial interest. Then they would retire to their separate rooms. He never touched her beyond the occasional formal hand-holding required by social situations, never kissed her, never even seemed to consider physical affection. It was exactly what he had promised, a marriage of partnership without romance. Eleanor told herself she was content. She had authority, intellectual stimulation, meaningful work. She was making improvements to tenant cottages, reorganizing the household, establishing a lending library for estate workers. The dowager praised her competence. The staff respected her. She was succeeding as a duchess. But at night, alone in her grand bedroom, Eleanor ached for something more, for a husband who might hold her, kiss her, love her, for the romantic dream she had never admitted to having. 1 month into their marriage, Eleanor was reviewing estate ledgers in the library when Alexander entered. It was mid-afternoon, unusual for him to be indoors. "I need your opinion on something," he said without preamble. He spread a map on the desk. "I am considering draining this marshland to create more arable acreage, but it would displace waterfowl populations and affect downstream water flow. What do you think?" Eleanor studied the map, grateful for the distraction from her melancholy. They spent 2 hours discussing environmental impact, tenant needs, long-term sustainability. It was the longest conversation they had shared since the wedding. As the sun set, casting golden light through the library windows, Alexander said something unexpected. "I have missed this. Our conversations during the courtship were the best part of my day. I realized recently that we have not talked, truly talked, since the wedding. That was my fault. I have been avoiding you." Eleanor looked up sharply. "Why?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Because marriage makes you my responsibility, and I am terrified of failing you, of being the cold, damaged husband you deserve better than. It seemed easier to maintain distance than to inflict my company on you more than necessary. Alexander, I married you knowing exactly who you are. You have not disappointed me. Have I not? You have been miserable. I see it. The forced smiles at dinner. The way you throw yourself into work to avoid being alone. I promised you partnership, but I have given you loneliness instead." Eleanor's heart clenched. He had noticed, cared enough to notice. "I am adjusting. Marriage is an adjustment for everyone. Do not lie to me, Eleanor. You promised honesty. I need honesty now." She took a breath, chose her words carefully. "You are right. I have been lonely, not because you have failed me, but because I want more than you are willing to give. I knew that going in. The fault is mine for hoping things might change. What do you want? Tell me. If it is within my power, I will give it." Eleanor almost laughed at the cruel irony. He could not give her what she wanted, his heart, but she could ask for smaller things. "I want your company, more than just dinners. I want the conversations we used to have. I want to feel like we are partners, not just two people living in the same house. I want you to stop avoiding me out of some misguided belief that your presence is a burden." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled a chair close to hers, sat so they were side by side, rather than across the desk. "Then that is what you will have. Starting now. Tell me honestly, what do you think of the marsh drainage plan?" They talked until past midnight, the way they had during courtship. About the estate, yes, but also philosophy, politics, science. Eleanor felt something in her chest unclench. This was what she needed. His mind, his attention, his presence. It was not love, but it was connection. And perhaps connection could sustain her where romance could not. Over the following weeks, things shifted between them. Alexander made visible efforts to spend more time with Eleanor. They took morning rides together, inspected tenant cottages side by side, shared the library in companionable silence while reading separate books. The loneliness eased. Eleanor found herself smiling genuinely at dinner, looking forward to their daily interactions. Alexander seemed lighter too, less rigid, occasionally even laughing at Eleanor's dry observations about estate matters. But the physical distance remained. Alexander never touched her beyond formal necessity, never entered her rooms, never suggested moving beyond their platonic arrangement. 3 months into their marriage, the dowager visited. She observed them for 2 days, then requested a private audience with Eleanor. "You have done well," the dowager said. "The estate runs more efficiently than it has in years. The tenants speak highly of you. You have exceeded my expectations." "Thank you, Your Grace. But you are unhappy, and my son, despite his improvements, is also unhappy. I need to understand why." Eleanor considered deflecting, but the dowager's shrewd eyes saw too much. "Your son and I have a functional partnership. We work well together, but there is no warmth, no affection. I knew that going in, but living it daily is more difficult than I anticipated. Has he been cruel, neglectful beyond the lack of affection?" "No, he is kind, respectful, attentive in his way, but he keeps himself locked away emotionally. I am his duchess, his partner, but I will never be his wife in any meaningful sense beyond the legal." The dowager sighed. Alexander's father was similar, damaged by his own demons, unable to show love even when he felt it. "I spent 30 years married to a man who cared for me but could not express it. It was difficult." Eleanor felt a surge of kinship with this formidable woman. "How did you bear it?" "I found purpose elsewhere. In managing the estate, raising Alexander, charitable work, I built a life that did not depend entirely on my husband's emotional availability." She paused. "But I also loved him despite everything. And I believe he loved me in his broken way. Love does not always look like novels promise, Eleanor. Sometimes it looks like respect, partnership. The choice to stay even when leaving would be easier." "Does Alexander love me?" Eleanor asked, then immediately regretted the vulnerable question. The dowager studied her carefully. "I do not know. My son is expert at hiding his feelings, even from himself. But I see how he looks at you when you are not watching. I see how he has changed since marrying you. Less isolated, less haunted. That suggests something beyond mere partnership." Eleanor wanted desperately to believe it, but hope was dangerous. Even if he feels something, he will never admit it. He does not believe in love. Then perhaps you must show him what love looks like. Not through grand gestures or emotional declarations, those would only make him retreat, but through steadiness, presence, the daily choice to care despite receiving little in return. If he is capable of love, patient demonstration may teach him to recognize it. After the dowager left, Eleanor considered her advice. Could she love Alexander patiently, without expectation of return? Could she build a life where her unrequited feelings were simply part of the landscape, like the hills and valleys of the estate? She did not know, but she would try. That night, Eleanor heard sounds from Alexander's room. Shouting, thrashing, the unmistakable sounds of a nightmare. She had heard it before. The walls were thick but not soundproof. Usually she stayed in her room, respecting the boundary Alexander had established. But tonight the sounds were particularly violent. She heard something crash, Alexander's voice roar with terror. Eleanor made a decision. She put on her dressing gown and went to his door. It was locked. She knocked urgently. "Alexander! Alexander, wake up!" No response except continued thrashing. Eleanor ran to get the master key from her sitting room, returned, unlocked his door. The scene inside made her heart clench. Alexander was tangled in his bedsheets, clearly trapped in a nightmare. His face was contorted with anguish. A lamp lay shattered on the floor where he had knocked it over. "Alexander," Eleanor said firmly, approaching the bed. "You are dreaming. You are safe. You are at Thornwood, not in Spain." He did not wake. She reached out, touched his shoulder. Instantly his hand shot out, grabbed her wrist with bruising force. His eyes opened but did not see her. He was still trapped in whatever horror his mind was reliving. "Alexander, it is Eleanor, your wife. You are safe. Please wake up." Slowly, awareness filtered back into his eyes. He released her wrist, scrambled back against the headboard, horror dawning on his face. "Eleanor, did I hurt you? God, did I hurt you?" His voice was raw, broken. Eleanor looked at her wrist. There would be bruises tomorrow, but she shook her head. "I am fine. You were having a nightmare. I should not have touched you. I knew better. You should not be in here, I told you. I told you why we needed separate rooms." Alexander's hands were shaking. I could have seriously harmed you. I have broken men's bones during these episodes. I have—" He broke off, pressing his palms against his eyes. Eleanor sat carefully on the edge of the bed, maintaining some distance. "Tell me what you were dreaming about." "No, you do not need those images in your head. Alexander, we are married, partners. If you carry these horrors alone, they will destroy you. Let me help carry them." He looked at her with such raw vulnerability that Eleanor's breath caught. The explosion. I dream about it constantly. The heat, the sound, watching my friend die. In the dreams, I can never reach him. I am always too late, always responsible. But you were not responsible. You were both casualties of war. My mind understands that. But my heart, whatever is left of it, refuses to believe. He looked at her wrist, already darkening with bruises. "I am dangerous to you, Eleanor. This is exactly why I warned you, why I insisted on separate rooms. I am not afraid of you. You should be." Eleanor made a decision. She shifted closer, took one of his trembling hands in both of hers. "Alexander, listen to me. You are not the enemy, your nightmares are, and fighting them alone has not worked. Perhaps it is time to try something different. What do you suggest?" "I have tried everything." "Have you tried letting someone care for you? Not as a duchess performing duty, but as a person who genuinely wants to help." She paused, chose her next words carefully. "Have you tried accepting that you might be worthy of care despite your wounds?" Alexander stared at her. "You cannot care for me like that. Our arrangement was never meant to include tenderness. I cannot give you what you deserve in return. I am not asking you to give me anything. I am offering freely. No expectations, no requirements. Just let me be here. When the nightmares come, let me try to help." "Eleanor, you do not understand what you are offering. This could go on for years, decades. You would be signing up for a lifetime of interrupted sleep and witnessing my demons." "I know. I am willing." He searched her face, clearly trying to understand her motivation. "Why? Why would you volunteer for this?" "Because I love you," Eleanor thought. But she could not say that. He would retreat completely if she spoke those words. So instead she said, "Because partnerships mean sharing burdens. Because you have given me authority, respect, purpose. Let me give you something in return, even if it is just presence during your worst moments." Alexander's resistance seemed to crumble. He gripped her hand tightly. "If I hurt you again, we will figure it out. We will establish protocol, safe words, distance, whatever keeps us both safe while allowing you to not be alone with this." Over the next several weeks, they developed a system. When nightmares struck, Alexander would call out. Eleanor, sleeping lightly in the next room, would come. She learned to approach from a distance, to speak before touching, to ground him with her voice until he was fully awake. It was exhausting. Some nights the nightmares came multiple times. Eleanor functioned on minimal sleep, but she also saw Alexander slowly beginning to trust that she would not leave, would not judge him for his broken sleep and violent dreams. Something shifted between them during those long nights, an intimacy born not from physical passion, but from witnessing each other's most vulnerable moments. Alexander saw Eleanor's patience, her steady care. Eleanor saw Alexander's raw humanity beneath his rigid control. They began spending more time together during the day as well, riding the estate together every morning, working side by side in the library every afternoon, dining at one end of the table instead of opposite ends, so they could actually converse properly. The staff noticed. Mrs. Davies remarked to the head gardener that the Duke and Duchess seemed genuinely fond of each other. The tenants commented on how His Grace seemed lighter, less haunted. Eleanor noticed too. Alexander smiled more, touched her hand occasionally when making a point during conversation. Once, when she made a particularly clever observation about crop rotation, he had laughed, a real genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. She was still in love with him, more deeply every day. But the pain of unrequited love had softened into something different, a quiet ache she could live with, because the companionship they shared was real and valuable, even without romantic love. 5 months into their marriage, they attended a ball in London, their first major social appearance as a married couple. Eleanor wore a gown of deep blue silk that the dowager had insisted brought out her eyes. Alexander wore formal black, his scars visible and no longer hidden. They danced together, and Eleanor was acutely aware of how different this felt from their first dance during courtship. Then, they had been strangers negotiating an arrangement. Now they moved together with practiced ease, reading each other's movements instinctively. "You are smiling," Alexander observed. "I am content. That is worth smiling about. Content is a low bar, Eleanor." "Is it? I have meaningful work, intellectual partnership, a husband who respects me. Most women have far less." Alexander's expression grew serious. "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me instead of waiting for someone who could offer you more?" Eleanor met his eyes. "No, I do not regret marrying you. Do you regret choosing me?" "Never. You have exceeded every hope I had for this marriage. You manage the estate brilliantly. You handle my nightmares without complaint. You challenge me intellectually. You have made Thornwood feel like a home instead of a mausoleum." He paused. "I am aware that I do not give you what most women want from marriage, that our arrangement is limited. I wish I could be different, for your sake." Eleanor's heart ached at the raw honesty in his voice. "Alexander, I entered this marriage with clear eyes. I knew what you could and could not offer. I made my choice freely. You have nothing to apologize for. But you deserve more. You deserve someone who can love you properly." The word love hung between them, dangerous and electric. Eleanor chose her response carefully. "What is love, Alexander? Is it poetry and passion? Or is it showing up every day, respecting your partner, building a life together? By that measure, what we have is closer to love than many so-called romantic marriages." Alexander looked at her with something like wonder. "How did you become so wise?" "I read too much philosophy." He almost smiled. Then, with visible effort, he said something that clearly cost him. "Eleanor, I need you to know. What we have, this partnership, this friendship, it matters to me. You matter to me more than I knew how to express, more than I am comfortable admitting." Eleanor's breath caught. It was not a declaration of love, but from Alexander, it was close, an acknowledgement that she meant something beyond contractual obligation. "You matter to me too," Eleanor said quietly. "Very much." They finished the dance in silence, but something had shifted. A boundary crossed, an admission made. That night, after the ball, Alexander escorted Eleanor to her rooms. At her door, he hesitated. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "Properly. Not the chaste wedding kiss I gave you. A real kiss." Eleanor's heart hammered. "Yes." Alexander stepped closer, cupped her face with both hands and kissed her. It was not expert. He was clearly out of practice. But it was real, sincere, full of emotion he did not know how to voice. When he pulled away, his eyes held something Eleanor had never seen before. Vulnerability, hope, fear. "I do not know what I am doing," Alexander admitted. "I have spent 7 years avoiding feeling anything. You have made me feel again. It terrifies me, but I do not want to run from it anymore." Eleanor placed her hand over his heart, felt it racing beneath her palm. "We will figure it out together. We do not have to rush. We do not have to follow any particular script. We will build this at our own pace." That night marked a turning point. Alexander began courting his own wife. Small gestures that showed growing affection, flowers left on her desk, books he thought she would enjoy, joining her for morning tea instead of eating alone in his study. They still maintained separate bedrooms. The nightmares remained a reality, but the emotional distance that had defined their early marriage gradually dissolved. 6 months into their marriage, Eleanor realized she had missed her courses for 2 months. The estate physician confirmed what she suspected. She was with child. When she told Alexander, he went very still. Then he asked, "Are you pleased?" "Yes." "Are you?" "I am terrified. What if I pass my demons to a child? What if I am a terrible father? What if—" Eleanor took his hands. "You will be a wonderful father. You are patient, intelligent, capable of deep care, even if expressing it is difficult. Our child will be lucky to have you." "Our child," Alexander repeated softly. "I have been so focused on duty, on producing an heir, that I forgot this would be a real person. Our child." Over the following months, Eleanor watched Alexander transform yet again. He became protective in a way that was both endearing and slightly overwhelming. He insisted she rest more, worry less, allow the staff to handle tasks she had previously managed herself. "I am pregnant, not ill," Eleanor protested. "Humor me. I have finally admitted to myself that you matter more than the estate, more than duty, more than anything. I cannot lose you." The admission took Eleanor's breath away. He had not said, "I love you." But this was close. Perhaps as close as Alexander could come. 7 months into the pregnancy, on a cold January evening, Eleanor went into labor. It was early. The physician had predicted another month. Alexander paced outside her rooms, forbidden entry by both the doctor and the midwife. The labor was long and difficult, 20 hours of pain that left Eleanor exhausted. But finally at dawn she heard the sound she had been waiting for, a baby's cry. "A girl, Your Grace," the midwife announced, "small but healthy and absolutely perfect." They brought the baby to Eleanor wrapped in soft blankets. She had Alexander's dark hair and what appeared to be Eleanor's grey eyes. Eleanor held her daughter and felt her heart expand in ways she had not thought possible. "Can my husband come in?" Eleanor asked. "Please, he needs to meet his daughter." Alexander entered cautiously, like a man approaching something holy. When he saw Eleanor holding their baby, he went to his knees beside the bed. "Eleanor, are you well?" "Exhausted, but well. Meet your daughter." Eleanor transferred the baby to Alexander's arms. He held her with exquisite care, staring down at the small face with absolute wonder. She is so small, so fragile. How can something so small even exist? She is strong, like her father. Alexander looked up at Eleanor, and his eyes were wet. "I did not know. I did not understand what this would feel like. Looking at her, I feel... Eleanor, I am terrified. What if I damage her? What if my nightmares, my coldness, my inability to—" "Stop," Eleanor said gently. "You are already loving her. I see it. That is all she will need. Your love, however imperfectly you express it." Over the following weeks, Eleanor watched Alexander fall completely in love with their daughter, whom they named Catherine. He was awkward at first, terrified of holding her wrong or hurting her, but Catherine had no such fears. She would settle peacefully in his arms, staring up at his scarred face with complete trust. "She does not see the scars," Eleanor observed one evening, watching Alexander walk the nursery with a fussy Catherine. "She just sees her father." "How do you know?" "Because I was the same. From the beginning I never saw the scars as disfigurement. I saw them as part of you, part of what made you who you are." Alexander looked at Eleanor with an expression she had seen increasingly often. Softness, vulnerability, something that might be love even if he could not name it. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something. I have been trying to find the words for months. Tell me." He shifted Catherine to one arm, reached out his free hand to Eleanor. She took it, let him pull her close so they stood together, their daughter between them. "When I chose you at that ball, I told myself it was pragmatic. You were intelligent, capable, unlikely to faint at my scars or bore me with empty conversation. I convinced myself it was a practical decision." He paused, gathering courage. "I was lying to myself. From the moment I saw you reading Plato in that corner, I was drawn to you in a way that had nothing to do with practicality. You were real in a world of performance. You saw me as a person, not a title or a monster. That recognition felt like coming home after 7 years of exile." Eleanor's heart began to race. "Alexander, let me finish. I told you I did not believe in love. I meant it at the time. But Eleanor, what I feel for you, what I have felt increasingly every day of our marriage, it terrifies me because it is so much larger than what I thought I was capable of. You have taught me that love is not just passion and poetry. It is showing up every day. It is caring for someone through nightmares and difficult births and ordinary moments. It is choosing someone repeatedly, not just once at an altar." He took a shaky breath. "I love you, Eleanor. I have loved you for months, probably longer. I was simply too afraid to admit it, too convinced I was incapable. But holding our daughter, seeing how you look at me, I realize that fear is no longer stronger than what I feel. I love you, completely, imperfectly, but truly." Eleanor felt tears stream down her face. "Alexander, I have loved you since our courtship, since you asked me to dance while 3 beautiful sisters stood waiting. I married you knowing you could not love me back. I made peace with it, but hearing you say these words, knowing you feel even a fraction of what I feel, it is more than I ever hoped for." Alexander handed Catherine to the nursery maid, who had been waiting discreetly in the corner. Then he pulled Eleanor into his arms properly for the first time, holding her like she was precious, irreplaceable. "I do not deserve you," he said into her hair. "Stop measuring in terms of deserving. We found each other. We built this. That is enough." He pulled back, cupped her face in his scarred hands, and kissed her with all the emotion he had been holding back for 9 months. It was not perfect. Nothing about them was perfect, but it was real, honest, full of love neither of them had thought they could have.